Welcome to this video. I'm coming to you today with a update on how I use my notebooks and my journals. And I did a live on Substack back in, I think, November of 2025, where I showed you my thinking for how I wanted to work with the upcoming year. I talked a little bit about what I was currently using. But now we're into March 2026, and I feel as though I've arrived at something that is potentially working for me. And I spoke about how what I tended to do since I moved to Germany, I left London in 2017. Since then, living in Germany, I started this practice whereby I would buy a Leuchtturm A5 hardback notebook, and it would become my everything book. I would have my notes about anything and everything. It would capture to-do lists, it would capture notes from online sessions, it would capture meal plans. It was pretty much whatever I needed to keep a track of would be in here. And what you'll see is, and I've spoken about this before, is I absolutely loved building a library of these notebooks. And this is notebook number 13. I would write the date on the spine and sometimes decorate the cover, sometimes not. And then I would always write at the beginning of the notebook what my word of the year was, corresponding to my age and the start and the end. And yeah, it would be something that I would capture all sorts in. Here it's just a quick pen drawing. There'll be some notes about journaling. There'll be, yeah, all manner of meditation type stuff, food related things, sketches of dogs. It was quite literally was my everything book. Here you'll see an example of where I've just kept notes on an artist date that I took myself to, and some thoughts about how I might want to share my work and what sort of work I might want to do. And actually, here I was spending a lot of time last year trying to understand how better to capture different aspects of my life that the one book system, this everything book, was falling a little bit short on. And there were specific things I needed to improve on in my life. One of those things was health tracking. Another one of those things was sort of memory keeping. And there's two ways I've been dealing with that in 2025. Memory keeping in 2025 looked like a Hobonichi weeks, whereby I would um, just very, very simply do like a line a day in my weeks. And then I would use the opposite side for tracking health related stuff and do a quick summary at the end of it. So that was pretty much my 2025 kind of approach with my weekly Hobonichi. In 2024, I had not been doing any memory keeping, really. I hadn't been doing any kind of daily capture of what I was doing, what was going on. And that's why when I started in 2025, I felt like that was something really missing. I got to the end of 24 and I felt like I couldn't remember, you know, much of the year, and I was feeling really frustrated by it. So memory keeping began anew on a daily basis. I felt like a very small section would be absolutely doable and achievable, and it gives me a nice weekly overview. I could capture some sort of simple things in there. At this point, I had bought myself a Mega because I thought I would need all these other pages in the back. But as you can see, I got to the end of the year and even though I used some of these for journaling, I didn't really fill them at all. So, yeah, that was a good learning. But I absolutely love these bow and tie weeklies that they do. They're a really nice size. They're great for capturing all sorts. And as much as I loved capturing this sort of daily overview, and I have this lovely summary of the entire year in a little book, I did find it wasn't enough space and I wanted to do more memory keeping. And then when I was critiquing this approach, I felt a little bit like things, although I loved the sort of everything in one book approach, I would lose track of the health notes really easily. I would find that, yeah, it wasn't quite, there were things I was getting to at the end of the year and I hadn't made progress on in a sort of life sense. So that was why I was rethinking everything, really. And so what I'd love to share now is where I have arrived at. Now, I have also mentioned on my previous live that I had this leather cover that I had bought many years ago. I mean, maybe even 12 years ago. And it previously had a long piece of leather sewn in, which came out the back, and it would wrap around this entire width of this notebook. And I found it really awkward to work with because I'd unwrap it and then this big thing would be in the way. And I ended up kind of abandoning it because it was only really made for the moleskin sized notebooks. And even though it's got this lovely engraving with my name, I sort of abandoned it because it felt like at the time I was only using the hardback moleskin. And I didn't really feel the need for the hardback to have an additional cover. However, I have fallen down the rabbit hole of Paper Republic love, and I wasn't really ready to buy one. And I dug this out of the archives and I snipped off the annoying bit of leather at the back, and I ended up attaching, inspired by Paper Republic, I attached some of the elastics into that back hole. And then I also copied that system. Really, this piece of elastic is actually just from a haberdashery store. It's just what you would use in clothing. So first I bought that just to test it out. The principle seemed to work. I could put a little notebook in there. I've got my moleskin Kahia notebooks, which is what I use to capture all of my work related notes in. They all go here, plus, a little scribble from my son. So I use that for work related notes. And then I bought myself the Paper Republic weekly planner. And in the weekly planner, I use that as a upgrade to this approach. And rather than trying to make this do everything, the week to view, which, I had some test pages here trying to work out what would go where, I've now allowed this to become the space where I have my overview of the week. So I can write down anything to do with appointments, things to do with household related responsibilities, things that pertain to sort of what my husband needs to be doing, childcare related support, even things like job numbers related to my day job. And then on the right side, it's my to-do list. So I can really see what needs to be done this week. So, obviously this is going to be a bit private, but I'll just blur out some of this stuff. But effectively, it's very, very scribbly. There might be a little doodle of a dog going on in there, but it's helpful for me to sort of see all of my kind of to-do lists. I take the approach in a kind of, I guess, bullet journal style where I'll carry things over from the previous week. And this becomes my kind of springboard for where all aspects of life can converge into one book. So parenting, work, fun, people that we're meeting outside of work, appointments, medical appointments, whatever it may be, goes in here. And this works really well for me in one container because I can have this open at my desk when I'm at work. I can be working and scribbling away whatever needs to be captured at meetings. And then I can also access this notebook, write down, job numbers, write down actions, and it's kind of like enough. It just works really well for me for that. Now, so that is my nice little cozy kind of work and life to do lists and bullet journaling type things, but it's nothing overly personal. It's quite functional, really, really functional. And so I like that. I like the fact that I can just continue using my Kahia notebooks. And with the Kahia notebooks, I work through them quite quickly, take it out onto the next. I rarely need to go back over past notes in there. So it's done and dusted. It's done and dusted. So that's really good. The bit I'm quite excited to share is this little bad boy. Now, when I was talking on my lives back in November, which I'll link to below, I was talking about how I wanted to simplify things, but have categories for stuff. But I had somehow kind of given myself a list of loads more books to work on. And that was a bit of a worry because I thought, have I gone over the top? Am I overdoing this? But I've recently purchased this A5 Muji case. from Muji, of course. And this is, I love this. This is potentially going to be the thing that solves all my problems. Now, when you open up this case, it's really nice and deep, actually. It has a clip on, this kind of popper system here, clips on, and you have a very spacious pencil, sort of mesh tool pencil case type thing. Really loads of room in there. And the thing is, it just neatly gets out of the way and remains attached, which is great. And then you have a slip pocket on this side and a sort of a deeper pocket on this side. And this is now able to hold all of my other categories of notebook. So I was working with the A6 Leuchtturm, sorry, the B6, is it the B6? Because I'd come from this and I wanted to have something that was perhaps, or I could keep using in the way that I use this, so I could keep using it for journaling, for brain dump, for capturing. You know, it's the master notebook. I still needed some kind of a master notebook where I could just scribble whatever I needed. But I was worried that this was going to be a bit chunky. So I was experimenting with downgrading to a smaller notebook with the idea that it would go in here. So I would have this nice little building of kind of notebook cover approach type thing. So that was my experiment. Now, the thing about this is you'll notice I've treated it the same way that I have with my master notebook, the hardcover. But I didn't quite get on. I filled it because I was determined to use it all up and fill it. But the trouble is, to be honest, I felt such a difference between this page and the experience of that page versus the feeling of being in this page, which is the A5. It feels so spacious. It feels like I've got so much room for my hand to move and I can fill, write, scribble. But actually, when I got to this, I felt a bit cramped and I missed the hardcover because it just meant that I was kind of a bit more bound to a desk rather than being able to just move wherever I wanted with it and write with ease on my bed, on the sofa, or wherever. And so I kind of reluctantly kind of filled these up. But also the other thing about it is that there are 123 pages in this B6 soft cover. And in the hardback Leuchtturm, there are 251 sides to work with. And in terms of the cost, there's not really like a huge reduction in the price of these versus these. So it felt a little bit, I didn't love the fact that it was so much less paper. And I knew I was going to go through them really quickly. So it would work out just a lot more expensive overall. So yeah, that was something I was just working with and playing with. Now, since buying this case, I'm really excited because although I've thought myself the next one along to fill this, so I've got a new A6 to fill, which I've just started. I will fill it. It'll get used really quickly because they always do. But what I'm really excited about is once that's done, I can go back to my nice spacious hardcover Leuchtturm because look, it also fits into this case and I don't have to give it up because I can just keep everything together as I had before in here. And it has a nice little handle so I can move around the house. If I travel, I can pack them all in here, put that into my travel bag, whatever it is, luggage. And I can just continue with my love of the hardback A5 Leuchtturm. And I can go back to adding beautiful finished books on my shelf to archive, which I've shared previously as well, which is a big passion, big love of mine. So I'm really enjoying this case for that reason. So I'm going to put these back in because I am going to fill this new one and happily do that. And so that is my master notebook that continues. It needs to be part of my notebook world and it helps to keep me grounded. It just keeps everything that needs to come out of my brain in one place. And then once I've got it all out of my brain in one place, I then move into the others. Now, I've literally bought The only Hobonichi I haven't bought now is the cousin, and who knows, let's see if next year I figure out a way to simplify things down and use one book. But at the moment, I enjoyed using the weeks last year so much. I love the paper. I love the experience of the pen on the surface that I just wanted to have another one this year. And I could have found a way of capturing the information that's in here in other ways, but I just really enjoy this book. It's such a beautiful little notebook. It gives me so much joy to open it up every day. And I wanted to have more than one in my collection so I could kind of archive them together because, one book is lonely, but then that's a nice pair. I did not buy the Mega because I don't need that many pages this time. So I'm happy that it's thinner, but I'm using this as my health tracker. And I felt the need to really, have a health tracker because I'm 48 this year. There's a lot going on and I need to just remember it all. So I've kind of created a list of things that need tracking, but also a way to be daily in something that reminds me of my health goals. I chose this lovely forest woodland one because we live right near a forest and it makes me happy. It makes me feel healthier just looking at it. Reminds me of how important nature is. And I use this to um, I have like the overview annually I use to track my cycle. I use it to track any medication, any pain, and then my monthly I've been using as a mood tracker and a workout tracker. That's been going really well. So I'm really happy with that. And then during the week, I've literally just been using it as a meal tracker. And so this is probably an example of how it's looking. Meals on one side, I just make a note of whatever it is that we've been eating as a family, an overview of how I've been moving, tracking various things that I've wanted to just make a note of, and my sleep. And then at the back, what I've started to do is have, you know, a monthly health reflections and some goals. Have they gone well? And I keep this as a way to also look back on the meals that I've made and just capture some of the favorites of the month or ones that the family particularly liked and or particular meals that my child may have liked. And it's a way for me just to keep a log of them so that because again, I always forget. I needed a way just to be able to capture food related stuff in here. So I'm really enjoying that. And then my upgrade from my daily memory keeping is the Hobonichi A6. And in the A6, I am just writing. It's just words. It's nothing aesthetic. It's nothing particularly visual. It's really, this is what was happening in my mind today. And then I tend to, in the top corner, just write a little summary, just a few words, a little smiley face for the mood, and that's kind of it. I sit down at the end of the day, I have my little package. I pull out my little book before I go to sleep and write down food stuff, health stuff. And in here, I use that to write spending. So I've got a kind of a little finance overview, which obviously I'm not going to show you any pages of that, but it's really just to track things like what's come out of my account that day. So I can at a glance get a sense of spending which, finance, health, and emotional mental well-being were the things I wanted to really bring to the foreground in 2026. And so to do that, I've literally given spaces for each of them. And in order to keep them kind of the forefront of my daily sort of habits, this case is keeping everything together. And I am so happy to have found this. This is on the Muji website now, A5 cover. Um, and yeah, it's really making me feel really, really happy. So I wanted to share that update with you. 2025 versus 2026 that's how it's looking. And I will also share coming up soon my current setup for sketchbooks. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching.